They thought $500 was enough to bury me, but they were dead wrong. I didn't need to scream or slam doors. I just needed to open my laptop, review the terms they never bothered to read carefully, and then that $500 turned into $12 million, evaporating from the company's account, a fitting price to teach them the value of what they had discarded. My name is Nina Ward. For 8 years, I was the ghost in the machine at Argentum Dynamics, the systems engineer who kept their infrastructure breathing steadily through 3 CTOs, 2 acquisitions, and countless strategy pivots. I wasn't the type to stand on stage giving presentations or appear in company photos. I was the one they called at 3 a.m. when systems crashed. The one who could trace a memory leak through 7 microservices without breaking a sweat. I liked it that way. Let others chase the spotlight. I just chased uptime. The morning everything changed started like any other. October rain pounded relentlessly against the Seattle office windows as I sipped my 3rd cup of coffee, checking the logs from overnight batch processes. Everything was green as usual. My code might not win beauty contests, but it ran like clockwork. Hey, got a minute? I looked up to see Logan Prince leaning against my desk, his fake smile plastered on. The new CTO just 6 weeks into his reign of terror. Harvard MBA, 0 technical background, hired to modernize engineering operations per the all-hands email that had half the senior engineers updating their LinkedIn profiles immediately. Sure, I said, locking my screen. He didn't sit. Power move number 1 from whatever management book he had memorized. I've been reviewing the code base. Interesting work you've got here. Interesting. After 20 years in tech, I knew that word meant trouble. Systems stable, I said. 99.97% uptime this quarter. Stability isn't everything. He shifted his weight, his designer shoes squeaking on the floor. Your code is hard to maintain for the team. All these custom libraries, unconventional patterns. We need to think about tech debt. Tech debt. The buzzword every non-technical executive learns to weaponize. I'd heard it from his predecessors, right before they discovered my indebted code was the only thing keeping the company from total collapse. Which components specifically concern you? I kept my voice neutral, professional. All of it, actually. But that's not why I'm here. He pulled out his phone, swiped to something. There's a more pressing issue. Last month's purchase. $500 for software licensing, personal credit card, no approval. My stomach tightened. The monitoring tool. I'd bought it out of pocket when procurement dragged on for 6 weeks, integrated it into the alerting system. It had prevented 2 potential outages. I submitted the expense report, I said, awaiting reimbursement. Not anymore. His smile widened. Using personal funds for company software is a serious violation, bypassing procurement security risks, financial abuse. It was a monitoring tool. We needed it. Procurement was irrelevant. He pocketed his phone. I'm afraid this is grounds for immediate termination. Security will escort you out. The words hung like smoke. 8 years. And it ends like this. Not performance, not real misconduct, just $500 and a new CTO's need to mark his territory. What about the reimbursement? I asked, knowing better. Denied. You purchased unauthorized. That's on you. I stood, slowly grabbing my coffee mug notebook, more muscle memory than conscious thought. Around me, the morning hum continued, keyboards clacking, someone laughing at the coffee machine. No one knew they were witnessing an execution. Your badge and laptop, Logan said, holding out his hand. I unclipped the badge from my belt, set it on the desk, undocked the laptop, handed it over. Every movement precise, controlled. Inside, something cold and calculating had begun to spin up like a demon process in the background. "Anything else?" I asked. He was already turning away. "Security, we'll meet you at the elevators." I turned back to my desk one last time, grabbing the small cactus I'd kept alive through 3 office moves, a resilient little plant, as patient as I was. Nina Tara from legal walked by, coffee in hand. "Everything okay?" "Just leaving," I said. "Take care, Tara." She frowned, confused. But I was already moving. The security guard, clearly uncomfortable, appeared at my elbow. Young guy, probably making $15 an hour to escort someone who'd been here before he graduated high school. "Sorry about this," he muttered as we walked. "Not your fault." The elevator ride was interminable, 23 floors of silence, watching the numbers tick down. By the lobby, that cold calculation had crystallized into something harder. They thought $500 was worth discarding 8 years of institutional knowledge. They had no idea what they just bought. Outside, the Seattle rain had softened to mist. I stood on the sidewalk, cactus tucked under my arm, and pulled out my phone, scrolling contacts to the name I needed. Tara Chen. The other Tara Law School friend specializing in intellectual property. "Hey, stranger," she answered on the second ring. "Got time for coffee?" I asked. "I need to discuss some licensing issues." "Sounds serious. Everything okay?" I glanced back at the Argentum glass tower logo gleaming despite the gray sky. It will be. In this American society, where the American dream promises equal opportunity, but reality is filled with people like Logan MBAs from prestigious schools climbing the power ladder by stepping on real workers like me. 8 years of dedication, sleepless nights, saving systems all dismissed over paperwork. It's classic power abuse, where big companies devour the souls of those who built them. But I, a resilient American engineer, wouldn't let them win easily. This injustice ignited a fighting fire in me, reminding me that the American spirit is about standing up against oppression, whether from bosses or the system. And from here, my journey began, not as a victim, but as a victor, waiting for the right moment. The coffee shop Tara suggested was one of those overly hip places with exposed brick walls and furniture that looked salvaged from an abandoned factory. She was already there when I arrived, as sharp as ever, in a charcoal suit probably worth more than my monthly mortgage. "You look like someone just kicked your dog," she said as I sat down. "Close. Got fired this morning." Her eyebrows shot up. Argentum finally imploded. New CTO decided to make an example over a $500 expense report. Jesus. After how long? 8 years. She whistled softly. Wrongful termination in an at-will state. They can fire you for wearing the wrong color socks if they want. I wrapped my hands around my coffee mug, absorbing the warmth. "But that's not why I called you." I pulled out my personal laptop, logged into GitHub, opened repo after repo, each time, stamped each with meticulously logged commit history. "These are libraries I developed," I said, "on my own time, on my own hardware. I integrated them into Argentum's systems over the years because they needed solutions and I could provide them." Tara leaned forward, scanning the licenses. "MIT on this one. GPL here. Wait." She paused at a specific repo. "This is your custom license. Drafted it 3 years ago. Free for personal use. Requires commercial licensing for any for-profit entity." And Argentum had been using them in production across their entire infrastructure. I opened another tab. "I've been diligent about tracking usage. Every API call, every build process, pulling from my repos." Tara sat back, a slow smile spreading across her face. You beautiful paranoid genius. You planned for this. Not planned, just prepared. I learned early that companies love using your work, but hate paying for it. So I made the terms clear even if no one reads them. How much are we talking? I showed her my calculations. Usage metrics, server counts. Build processes, 3 years of commercial use across dozens of systems. Conservative estimate $2.4 million in licensing fees. She's nearly choked on her coffee. That's not conservative by any definition. It is when you consider the damages if I revoke the license. Every system running my code would need rewriting or shutdown, which they can't do because only I understand it. Oh, they understand it fine. They just can't copy it. There's a difference. Tara studied me over her coffee. This isn't just about the money. Money's just how we keep score. This is about 8 years of 3 a.m. calls, holding their systems together with digital duct tape and prayers. About being invisible until something breaks, then essential until it's fixed. And now, they've made you visible. Their mistake. She pulled out her tablet, started taking notes. Okay, first step is to document everything. Every commit, every integration point, every time they pulled from your repos. I've done it. I slid a USB across the table. 3 years of logs, Git history, CI/CD pipelines, even internal Slack messages discussing deployments. How did you? I built their logging system. I know where every byte of data lives. She pocketed the USB. This is going to be fun. But Nina, you know, once we send this, no going back. You'll burn every bridge. They lit the match when they escorted me out over $500. I'm just choosing where the fire spreads. We spent the next 2 hours mapping strategy. Tara would review everything, ensure our legal position was rock solid. I'd monitor their systems externally, track continued usage. We'd give them time to feel the loss before striking. How long do you want to wait? She asked as we prepared to leave. Long enough for it to hurt, for them to feel the absence before understanding the cost. That's cold. It's business. They taught me that this morning. I left the coffee shop and drove home through Seattle's endless drizzle. My apartment felt strange at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Too quiet, too still. I set the rescued cactus on the windowsill and opened my laptop. Habit made me check Argentum's status page first. All green light systems humming my code, still doing its job, even as HR processed my termination. The irony wasn't lost on me, but I knew those green lights wouldn't last. Logan Prince had no idea what he'd inherited. No understanding of the Jenga tower of dependencies I'd built and maintained for 8 years. He saw mess where I saw evolved solutions. Tech debt where I saw battle-tested reliability. He'd learn. In American society where big corporations like Argentum boast about innovation, but actually exploit the intellectual labor of people like me, the silent engineers building the foundations, this injustice is all too common. They treat us as costs rather than assets, easily replaced by slick MBAs who know nothing about code. But I, with my resilient American spirit, had prepared for this day. This wasn't just personal revenge. It was a fight against an abusive system where a single engineer could turn the tables with knowledge and the law. My journey now shifted from victim to warrior, with Tara by my side and the fire of justice smoldering ready to erupt. I pulled up my personal monitoring dashboard, the one running on my own infrastructure that Argentum didn't even know existed. The hooks I'd built into my open source libraries. Nothing malicious, just telemetry usage stats, error rates, performance metrics. Everything a responsible maintainer needs to support their code. Within hours, I saw the first signs. A junior dev pushed a cleanup commit, removing what they thought was redundant error handling. Logan's influence, no doubt. Clean code over functional code, error rates spiked immediately. Not enough to trigger alarms, but enough for me to spot they'd introduced a race condition that would explode under heavy load. Give them a week, maybe two, and they'd have their first real outage. I closed the laptop and made dinner. Salmon, asparagus, a glass of wine. Eating alone at the kitchen counter, watching the city lights blur through the rain-streaked window. My phone buzzed. Occasionally, old colleagues reached out. Hearing the news, they called. I let them go to voicemail. That night, I slept better than I had in years. No more on-call duty, no anxiety over overnight batches. Just the quiet satisfaction of knowing that somewhere across the city in Argentum's gleaming tower, my absence was already costing them. They thought they'd saved $500. They had no idea what they were about to pay. The first 2 weeks passed in a strange peace. I established a new routine: morning runs, without checking production alerts, coffee, without the dread of urgent Slack pings. I even joined a pottery class, something I'd meant to do for years, but never had time. But I didn't stop watching. My monitoring dashboard became a dark entertainment, a systems-level soap opera unfolding in real time. The junior devs, emboldened by Logan's modernization mandate, continued their refactoring crusade. They renamed variables for clarity, restructured modules for elegance, deleted, commented out code they deemed unnecessary. Each change was a small cut, harmless in isolation, but catastrophic in aggregate. The first real outage hit on Thursday afternoon. I was at Pike Place Market browsing flower stalls when my phone buzzed with an auto alert. Memory leak in the payment processing service. Not my problem anymore, but old habits die hard. I found a cafe and pulled up their public status page. Still green, but I knew better. The leak was in code interfacing with one of my libraries. The cleanup dev had removed what looked like redundant object cleanup, except it wasn't. It handled edge cases in a third-party payment API that only surfaced under specific conditions. By the time they noticed, 3 hours had passed. The service was gobbling 80 gigabytes of RAM and climbing. In the old days, I'd have spotted it in minutes, fixed it in 10. Now, I sipped my latte and watched their response times plummet. They contained. It eventually rolled back. The change restarted the service. But the damage was done. 3 hours of degraded payment processing. Probably a few thousand failed transactions, the kind that makes CFOs ask uncomfortable questions. That evening, Tara called. You see the news? What news? Argentum had an issue. Stock dipped 2% on reports of payment processing problems. That's too bad, I said, stirring pasta on the stove. Uh-huh. You wouldn't know anything about that. I'm unemployed, remember, just enjoying my severance. What severance? You said they escorted you out. Exactly, she laughed. You're enjoying this too much. Just the right amount. But the payment outage was just the appetizer. The main course came the following week during their monthly release cycle. I'd built their CI/CD pipeline 3 years ago. An intricate orchestration of build servers, test environments, and deployment strategies. It was ugly, full of workarounds and edge cases, but it handled their polyglot architecture with minimal downtime. Logan had clearly mandated a streamlined deployment process. I watched it unfold like a slow-motion car crash. They replaced my custom deployment scripts with an off-the-shelf solution, clean and modern and utterly incompatible with Argentum's reality. The first deploy went fine, a simple front-end update. The second, touching multiple services, started cracking. Service A deployed successfully but expected the new API from Service B, which was still deploying. Service B wouldn't start because Service C's database migration wasn't done. Service C was waiting for Service A to release a lock. Circular dependencies deadlock the whole platform, grinding to a halt. From my apartment, I poured a glass of wine and dragged a camp chair to the balcony. The Seattle skyline twinkled in the distance. Argentum's tower shone like a beacon. I imagined the war room Logan pacing engineers, debugging frantically pizza boxes piling up as hours stretched. They'd fix it, roll back, untangle, deploy in better sequence, but not before hours of downtime. Not before enterprise clients called their account managers. Not before the board asked why the new CTO's modernization efforts were causing more problems than they solved. My phone buzzed. Unknown number, but I recognized the Argentum prefix. Hello. Nina. A familiar voice. Marcus, a senior engineer. We'd worked together for 5 years. Hey, I know this is awkward, but we're having issues with the deployment pipeline. That's too bad, I said, watching a ferry cross the bay. Look, I know Logan fired you, but we're stuck. The new deployment system's locked up, and we can't figure why. Could you just... Marcus, I interrupted gently. I don't work there anymore. I know. But maybe just a pointer, point us in the right direction. I felt for him, really. Marcus was a good engineer, hamstrung by management decisions he couldn't control. But pity doesn't pay bills or restore trust. Check the service dependency graph, I said finally. Look for loops. And Marcus. Next time Logan decides to fix what ain't broken, remember this moment. Nina. I hung up. Let them figure it out. I'd helped more than they deserved. By morning, they'd resolved the deployment crisis, but the fallout spread. Tech blogs picked it up. Argentum Dynamics suffers second major outage in 2 weeks. Stock dipped another percentage point. LinkedIn lit up, with recruiters smelling blood in the water, circling the Argentum talent pool. Tara called that afternoon. I've finished reviewing your docs. It's airtight. Licenses clear, usage logged, terms enforceable. Good. When do you want to pull the trigger? I thought. Part of me wanted to wait longer, let them dig deeper. But there's strategy in striking while they're weak. Monday, I said. Give them the weekend, thinking they've stabilized. Cold. Calculated? There's a difference. I spent the weekend preparing not legal docs. Tara handled that. I prepared myself. Once the demand letter went out, no turning back. 8 years of relationships gone. Any chance of references torched. But then, I thought of Logan's smile as he denied reimbursement. The security escort, like I, was a criminal. $500 they thought worth more than my expertise. Sunday evening, I sat at my computer drafting an email to Tara. Short, simple. Send it. In this American society, where corporations like Argentum crown themselves icons of innovation, but actually extract the labor of bottom-up builders, I watched their unraveling as a vivid lesson. The junior devs, young and eager but inexperienced, thrust into a battle they didn't understand, all because of top-down decrees. Logan represented the disconnected management class, those who think engineering can be modernized with PowerPoints instead of sweat and all-nighters. But I, with the indomitable American spirit of pioneers who fought injustice from the nation's founding, was witnessing justice slow, but sure. This wasn't just a personal tale. It was a warning to abusive systems that when power overreaches, a brave individual can spark change, protecting labor's value and restoring justice. My fire of justice was now blazing, and I wouldn't let it die until they'd learned their costly lesson. Monday morning arrived gray and drizzly. Seattle at its most typical, as if the city wept for those about to reap what they'd sown. I brewed coffee strong and hot, then settled into my chair, eyes glued to the screen like an eager audience awaiting the main act. The demand letter would hit Argentum's legal department at 9 a.m. sharp, just as staff settled in, sipping coffee and pretending the new week would be smooth. I no longer had internal access, but my imagination painted a vivid picture, an email popping up, some junior legal reading through then paling. Panic spreading like a virus forwarding up the chain, emergency meetings called, and finally, Logan getting a copy, his face twisting as he realized it wasn't a joke. I smiled, sipping coffee, feeling justice course through my veins. Not cheap schadenfreude, but the deep satisfaction of an American who'd learned to rise after being knocked down. 8 years of sweat, blood, and tears poured into that machine, only to be treated like disposable gear. Now, they'd learn expertise isn't cheap. At 10:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. Argentum number again. Hello. Please hold for Logan Prince. I smirked, quicker than expected. Nina. His voice lacked its slick confidence. I just received a rather alarming letter from your attorney. Then, you should have your lawyers contact mine. Hold on. I'm sure we can resolve this reasonably. We could have. You chose not to when you fired me over a legitimate business expense. That was separate. This $2.4 million demand is based on what? 3 years of documented commercial use of my proprietary code. License terms are clear. You developed that code while working for us. On my time, on my hardware, with clear ownership retained. Want me to forward the email where your predecessor acknowledged the arrangement? Silence. I could almost hear him grinding his teeth. This is extortion, he said finally. This is contract law. You used my software commercially without a license. The bill reflects usage to date. Of course, if you want to stop using my code immediately, you know we can't. Then I suggest you have your team review the terms and prepare payment. Nina, be reasonable. The company can't just cut a $2 million check. Should have thought of that before saving $500 on my reimbursement. I hung up, heart pounding, but not with fear. It was the adrenaline of impending victory. The rest of the morning was quiet, but I knew a storm brewed in Argentum's tower. Emergency meetings, frantic code reviews, desperate searches for alternatives. But outwardly, they stayed silent. That changed after lunch. Marcus texted, "Holy crap, Nina, Logan's losing it. He's ordering us to rip out all your code by end of week." I didn't reply, but watched my telemetry dashboard with interest. Usage of my libraries actually increased as they spun up instances to map dependencies like scratching an itch, making it worse. By Tuesday, things escalated. Tara forwarded an email from Argentum's legal disputing the claim, arguing work for hire superseded personal licenses, typical big company bullying tactics. "How do you want to respond?" she asked. "Send them the full audit trail, every commit from my personal laptop, every weekend, and evening timestamp. And Tara include the Slack threads where their engineers discussed using my personal projects to solve company problems." That'll shut them up. That's the idea. Wednesday brought the first public fallout. An exhausted junior dev accidentally pushed internal docs to a public repo. Not sensitive, but it included architecture diagrams showing how deeply my libraries were embedded in their systems. Tech, Twitter, exploded. Argentum, Dynamics, built on engineers' personal projects, trended briefly. Stock already shaky dipped another 3%. Logan called again that evening. I let it go to voicemail. "Nina, Logan here. We need to talk. The board's concerned about the situation. I'm sure we can find a mutually beneficial solution." I deleted the message and poured more wine. Thursday was truly entertaining. I woke to my GitHub repos spiking in traffic not from Argentum, but from their competitors. Word of the licensing dispute leaked. Suddenly, everyone wanted to see the code worth $2 million. My inbox filled with inquiries, startups wanting library licenses, recruiters waving senior architect roles, even a few offers to buy the IP. I forwarded the best ones to Tara. Might help negotiations. You're ruthless, she replied. I love it. But the real fun came from Argentum's efforts to exit me. Their engineering team split, one group trying to reverse engineer my libraries, the other hunting replacements. Both failed spectacularly. Reverse engineering hit wall after wall. My code wasn't deliberately obfuscated, but it was the product of years of evolution optimized for their specific quirks. Without understanding the why behind each decision, they couldn't recreate the what. Replacement efforts were even funnier. Off-the-shelf solutions existed for some functions, but none handled Argentum's odd requirements. Their architecture had grown around my code like vines on a fence. Removing it meant rebuilding everything. Friday morning, Tara called early. They blinked. Oh, full payment on the invoice plus interest plus legal fees, but they want ongoing licensing and an NDA on the settlement. No. They pay the invoice for past usage. If they want future, that's separate negotiation. And I make no promises on publicity beyond it breaching legal agreements. Harsh. It's business. They taught me, remember? She sighed. I'll counter. It'll get uglier before it's done. In American society, where big dreams are built on the backs of workers like me, the silent engineers making the wheels turn, this battle symbolized the fight against corporate power abuse. Logan and his legal team represented a system that treats employees as disposable resources willing to litigate to avoid fair pay. But I, with the pioneering American spirit of those who fought injustice since the founding, was proving that law and knowledge could tip the scales. Their desperate calls bungled failures weren't just personal revenge. They were reminders that when power oversteps, one courageous individual can ignite change, safeguarding labor's worth and restoring justice. My fire was now raging, and I wouldn't extinguish it until they learned their expensive lesson. She was right. The next week saw Argentum's situation worsen. Without my libraries, their CI/CD pipeline, held together by digital prayers fragile as thread. A botched update took down their customer portal for 6 hours, 6 hours of stalled revenue, major clients calling account managers, social media buzzing with #Argentum down. The board convened an emergency meeting, I knew, because Rebecca, an old colleague from finance, texted. Logan's in with the board. He looks like he's gonna cry. I felt a twinge of pity, almost. Then I remembered his smile, standing over my desk, ending my career over $500. Pity evaporated like Seattle mist. The next morning, everything shifted. Tara called at 7 a.m., voice electric with excitement. They caved. How? Full payment, $2.4 million, plus $50,000 in legal fees. No conditions on publicity, and they want to negotiate ongoing licensing. I sank into my chair, coffee cup trembling slightly. It was really happening. The number I'd calculated, the justice I'd planned, all coming to fruition. Nina, you there? Yeah, just processing. There's more. They want an in-person meeting to discuss long-term licensing. Logan won't. The board fired him last night. Effective immediately. I closed my eyes, breathed deep. Victory should taste sweeter, but mostly I felt weary. Vindicated, but weary. Set up the meeting, I said. But Tara, make it clear I'm not coming back as an employee. If they want my code, they license it like any vendor. Got it, Nina. You did it. You won. Had I won? I got paid, got justice, got revenge. but I'd also scorched my professional home in the process. Yeah, I said softly. I won. The meeting was set for the following Tuesday. I dressed carefully, professional, but not corporate confident, but not aggressive. A simple suit, hair tied back the small cactus in mind as a symbol of resilience. The building that had escorted me out weeks ago now welcomed me like a valued partner. The conference room was packed, board members interim, CTO, legal counsel, even the CEO dialing in from New York. They needed my code, and everyone knew it. Miss Ward. The board chair began, voice polite but strained. Thank you for coming. We'd like to discuss a long-term arrangement. I listened to their pitch, annual licensing fees, support contracts, even consulting to train their team. The numbers were generous. They'd learned the cost of undervaluing expertise. I appreciate the offer, I said when they finished. But I'm concerned about Argentum's technical direction. You fired me for writing code that works over code that looks pretty. Why should I believe that's changed? The interim CTO leaned forward, meeting my eyes, because we've learned a painful lesson. We need stability, not aesthetics. And the $500? The chair actually smiled. We've reviewed it, reimbursement approved with interest, and we're updating procurement policy to prevent such short-sighted decisions. I considered. Good money, full vindication, but something still nagged. I need one more thing, I said. A public statement acknowledging that Argentum's infrastructure is built on open-source contributions from its engineers. That innovation comes from empowering developers, not constraining them. They exchanged glances. The CEO cleared his throat over the speaker. That's unusual. So is firing someone over a $500 expense they incurred to keep your systems running. Deal or no deal? It took them less than 5 minutes to agree. I signed the licensing agreement that afternoon. $400, 000 annual fee for unlimited use of my libraries plus hourly consulting as needed. The public statement went out the next day, carefully worded, but clear. Argentum values its engineers and their contributions, both formal and personal. Logan's departure was announced separately, buried in a Friday afternoon press release, pursuing other opportunities, the standard corporate lie. The tech community connected the dots. Through it all, I felt the power of the American spirit, not just pursuing dreams, but standing up when dreams are trampled. People like Logan, with flashy degrees and false power, often abuse the system to crush real workers. But an ordinary engineer from rainy Seattle proved justice doesn't always go to the strongest, but to the most persistent. This struggle didn't just salvage my honor. It reminded every American that fighting injustice from bosses or corporations is our legacy, and victory can come from the unlikeliest places, like an undervalued open-source library. Now, with the deal in hand, I stepped into a new phase, freer, stronger, ready to build the future on my own terms. About a month later, I sat in my new office, a co-working space overlooking the Sound, where waves rippled under rare Seattle sunshine, as if the city blessed my fresh start. No more cold glass walls of Argentum, no more soulless meetings or top-down decrees. Now, everything was mine, from the cluttered desk with laptop and notebooks to the resilient cactus on the sill, a companion that had witnessed the whole journey. I was reviewing pull requests for the libraries now. Officially a commercial product code, the Argentum fiasco had turned me into an accidental entrepreneur. Dozens of companies wanted what I'd built, and I happily licensed it to them, with clear, fair terms, no more power games. The Argentum incident rippled outward, making me a quiet icon in the tech community. Inquiries poured in, fledgling startups seeking advice, fellow engineers sharing similar abuse stories, even scattered blog posts about the Seattle engineer who flipped the script with code licensing. But I stayed silent, letting actions speak. My phone buzzed with a LinkedIn notification. Logan Prince updated his status. Chief Technology Officer at Metacore Solutions. I laughed out loud. Metacore was one of my new clients integrating my libraries into their infrastructure. I made a note to send them an especially thorough invoice, not out of spite, but fairness. They'd pay fair value for real worth. Rebecca from Argentum texted, "Saw Logan's new role. You know, I know everything," I replied. "Ruthless. Prepared. There's a difference." I turned back to code fingers finding their familiar rhythm, on the keys but freer than ever. Logan Prince epitomized what's wrong in the American system climbers with degrees and connections dismissing real workers like me, the engineers, building from zero, keeping the economic wheels turning. His firing wasn't just personal triumph. It was a wake-up call for corporations that power abuse leads to consequences that the American spirit, resilience, ingenuity, and justice fights will always seek balance. I'd burned old bridges to build stronger new ones, and now, with freedom in hand, I felt true power, not revenge, but shaping the future my way where labor's value is honored, not exploited. 2 years have passed since that fateful morning in Logan's office, when he thought he could crush me with one foolish decision. Argentum. Dynamics is still my client, one of my best, actually. Their new CTO, promoted from within, understands code over superficial aesthetics, even sends me holiday cards yearly. We've built an excellent working relationship based on mutual respect and clear contracts. No more power plays or subtle dismissals. My licensing business has grown beyond imagination. 23 companies now pay for commercial use, and I've hired 2 developers to help with maintenance and support. We work remotely, set our own hours, and never quibble over expense reports, an environment I dreamed of where work is valued by results, not bureaucracy. Logan Prince lasted only 6 months at Metacore. When their system started showing familiar issues, errors from misunderstanding architecture, they called me for consulting. I explained professionally that certain architectural decisions seemed to be causing instability without naming Logan directly. They thanked me, paid my fee, and soon after, his tenure ended. Now he teaches at a business school focusing on technical leadership for non-technical executives. I hope his students learn from his mistakes, though. I doubt he frames them that way, probably packages them as strategic challenges, instead of admitting arrogance cost him everything. Tara and I still meet for coffee monthly, a ritual between friends who've weathered the storm. She's built her own firm, specializing in IP for engineers, and often says, "You started something, Nina. Developers are getting smarter about protecting their work." "Good," I reply. "About time." The $500 monitoring tool still runs in my infrastructure, now monitoring dozens of client systems, generating hundreds of thousands in value by preventing outages and catching errors early. I keep the original invoice framed in my office, the red "denied" stamp, a reminder not to harbor grudge, but to remember small decisions can change lives. Sometimes I wonder, what if Logan had simply approved that reimbursement? Would I still be at Argentum maintaining systems in quiet gratitude? Would I have realized the true value of what I'd built? Probably not. Comfort breeds complacency, and I'd been comfortable too long. It took being pushed off the cliff to discover I could fly. My phone buzzes with a potential client, a startup who'd heard about my libraries wanting to discuss licensing, maybe consulting. I checked their leadership team. No Logan Prince, No Harvard MBA with grand modernization ideas. I'd love to meet, I text back. Let's talk about how I can help you build something that actually works. Because in the end, it was always about the work-solving problems, building systems, creating something elegant, functional, and sustainable. They thought they saved $500, but what they bought was my freedom to do what I do best on my terms at my price. And that, as Logan might say, if he'd learned anything, is just good business. The rain starts again, tapping its familiar rhythm on the office window. Seattle's beat reminding me life goes on. I turn back to code fingers, finding rhythm on the keys. Somewhere in server rooms and data centers, my libraries work, quiet magic processing payments, routing messages, keeping the digital world spinning. All because someone thought $500 was worth more than a person keeping their lights on. Their mistake, my fortune, take mine. And the best part, this isn't even the end. It's just the beginning of what happens when you teach an engineer their true worth. Code keeps running, invoices keep coming, and somewhere in a business classroom, a former CTO teaches future executives about investing in strategic tech. I hope he mentions the $500, explains how small decisions can ripple into million-dollar losses, how treating engineers as costs instead of assets can topple infrastructures. But mostly, I hope his students are wiser than he was. Because out here in the real world, where code meets commerce, we're tired of being undervalued. We know our worth now, and we're not afraid to invoice. The cactus on the windowsill has grown, sprouting offsets I've potted and gifted to clients, a small reminder that good things grow when nurtured properly, that patience and resilience pay off in the end. My latest commit pushes successfully another improvement to the library that started it all clean, functional, valuable code. The Git history shows my name, my timestamps, my copyright clear and indisputable. I close the laptop, stretch ready to end the day. Tomorrow brings more code to write, more problems to solve, more value to create. But tonight, I head home, pour a glass of wine, and watch the city lights sparkle in the rain. They thought $500 could bury me. Instead, it set me free. My revenge cost them $12 million, but my freedom, that's priceless. In American society where big dreams are built on intellectual labor, but often exploited by corporations for profit, my story is a vivid testament to resilience against injustice. People like Logan with artificial power from degrees and positions represent a system that undervalues real workers like me, the silent engineers keeping the digital world running. But through this journey, I've proven the American spirit isn't just about pursuing success, but rising when oppressed, using law and knowledge to flip the script and turning failure into a foundation for greater freedom. This isn't just a personal story. It's a wake-up call for businesses that treating employees as disposable leads to costly consequences, and for every American that fighting abuse of power is our heritage, bringing real change. Lessons learned. This story proves a truth when power oversteps. A single stance can rewrite the rules, turning injustice into fuel for greater freedom. And success, reminding that intellectual labor's value can't be undervalued without cost. Never let anyone silence your voice, fight hard, for that's the American way, resilient, innovative, and unyielding to injustice.